Hello everyone, welcome. I'm David Eckstein. I'm going to introduce them properly, but I can't resist, because we're in august company. I have Bonnie Dean, Sarah O'Shea and Sally Kift with us today. Michael Healy is an apology, but has sent us some notes. We have his body of research as well, so he's very much a presence in today's discussion. We're going to get underway in just a moment. There are still people filing in. We've received some questions ahead of time, and we'll be addressing those in our last half hour. And we'll spend the first hour discussing some themes that are relevant to today's topic. All right, well, look, perhaps we might get underway today, everyone. Welcome. I'm David Eckstein. I'm the lecturer for equity programs at Deakin University, and we're talking about a subject today that's very close to my heart: career development learning, harnessed for the purpose of creating more equitable work-integrated learning. And I would just like to share my screen for just a moment while I make an acknowledgement of country and also share some introductions. So I believe I'm sharing my screen now. I wanted to reflect on the acknowledgement of country about the importance of difference in Indigenous culture. I stand for a reality, I think, where we have shared purpose and shared destiny with our Indigenous compatriots. And I think a really important part of that is germane to today's topic. There's a growing body of research that indicates that difference is regarded in a different way to the way we have traditionally regarded difference, especially differences such as neurodivergence, which are variously described as being difficult or inconvenient and perhaps not our business. And this growing body of research about Indigenous attitudes towards difference has traced across the great variety of Indigenous cultures and traditions a focus on difference, including neurodivergence, as being a gift to the community. And I want to acknowledge that in the context of today's discussion, because I think this is an important marker of some of the important perspectives that we have to learn from our Indigenous compatriots, but also Indigenous heritage and tradition. And I extend that respect also to members of our Indigenous communities who are joining us today. But it gives me very great pleasure now to welcome three very important speakers. Alas, Michael Healy is an apology today and wishes he could be with us, but is unable to be with us today, which is a great pity. But I've just lost my notes, which is hilarious. Look, I'll riff on this, Bonnie and colleagues, and you can set me straight. Bonnie Amelia Dean is from the University of Wollongong and is a specialist in WIL pedagogy and enabling academic staff to provide authentic assessment that is grounded in career development learning for the purpose of increased equity. Bonnie, how did I do?
Do you know what? That was one of the sharpest introductions I could have hoped for. So much pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I was aiming for 50 words, but I think that was about 48. Michael Healy's work is well known to us, and his emphasis on career development learning, on its relationship to employability, on its this is curious. We have okay, pardon, different LB, not Leanne Burke from NADCAS, who is joining us today. So Michael Healy's research into career development theory has effectively systematised our understanding of the different branches of career development learning and career education theory. And his work is a real gift, I think, to our professional community, and is something that we'll be drawing on quite a bit in today's discussion. Sally Kift is no stranger to any of us. She's been working as a higher education consultant since, I think, about 2017. Is on the board of several Navitas organisations, and has written extensively about the important area of transition pedagogy, which also is germane to today's discussion. And the last in our alphabetical order today is Sarah O'Shea, also no stranger to any of us, has a lengthy record in equity research in the higher education sector, is globally acknowledged as an expert in this area, is editor of an international, sorry, is it the Routledge? Sarah, help me out here.
Yeah, the Routledge series, Research in Higher Education.
Research in Higher Education, and has also conducted some fascinating research about the experiences of first-in-family students at university, and this too is germane to today's discussion, because we're very good at helping, and this is my own personal view of this, that is backed up by some of my own research, which is that we're very good at helping students who are going to be okay anyway. We're less able when it comes to supporting students who come without the social capital that the students who traditionally enter university come with. So, a very warm welcome, everyone. Thank you. I can hear the thunderous round of applause across cyberspace. That's very impressive. And I wanted to kick things off, everyone, by just saying a few words about career development learning. And I'm borrowing some of the ideas of our colleague, Dr. Michael Healy, who can't be with us today. But I do want to start by making the point, before I throw to Sarah, where we'll get some insight about student voices, and what happens when we deny targeted career development learning for the benefit of students. But first of all, just a note about what career development learning is. It is not this common misconception that it's a transaction that involves a member of staff who's positioned as expert in a process that is a series of simple steps where we transmit information that lets students in on some magic phrases and a couple of secrets that are going to set them up in their career. I mean, students could be forgiven for thinking, when we adopt this mode of operation, that their education at university amounts to nothing more than a passport. Of course, we know that it is much more profound than that our higher education has far more depth and is intended to be transformational. Well, this is the point about career development learning. Career development learning is transformational. It is dynamic because it is very personal. As Michael Healy tells us, it is also ubiquitous. The opportunities for engaging with career development learning are many and varied. We just need to harness them, not just for the benefit of every student, but for, and I would argue in particular, for the benefit of students with marginalising experience. That is what makes career development learning enabling. As a sector, we appear to be blind to many of the opportunities that career development learning provides, because career development learning has a lot to do with the nature of particular kinds of capacities. There is a very lengthy history of academic research going back around 100 years or more, and that surprises a lot of people. But when we come to this area of work, it's very easy for us to feel that this is something new, that it's something fresh and that if we have ideas, then we should run with them. And I have a lot of sympathy for that point of view, because our sector makes a great deal of demands on people. And I am delighted that there is such interest in this area, but we ignore the evidence at our peril. And this profession of career development, learning, careers education, that also involves careers counselling, has gone through several transitions from a kind of a medicalised approach that actually diagnoses people for very sound reasons. During post-war reconstruction, these kinds of transactions were deemed to be necessary, so that we would actually administer tests to students and to workers to tell them what they were capable of and to forecast their futures for them. The profession has gone through a number of seismic shifts since then, and I think the most profound one is the shift towards constructivist approaches, I beg your pardon, in place of that positivist approach where we deemed ourselves to be expert in other people's lives, and we deemed ourselves and our theory to be sufficiently expert in other people's lives that we could tell them what they should do with their professional lives. The constructivist approach is far more informed by the reality that we simply don't know enough about people, how they see the world or how they want to fit themselves into it, to go anywhere near the idea that we should tell them what they should do and how they should think about it. This is the business of career development learning. It's enabling the way people think about themselves as emerging professionals. And so as a result of engaging with the kinds of constructivist approaches that are part of Michael's discussion, we would find ourselves helping to nurture students' career adaptability, to help them gain a measure of control, of being able to make meaningful plans, not so that they can predict now where they're going to be in 5 years' time, but they can make plans instead about what matters to them, the kind of impact they would like their work to have, how they would like to use their learning, to borrow from the great management guru, Peter Drucker. This is directly relevant to marginalised people. The most empowering thing you could do for them is help them decide what they would like to do with their learning and what they would like to learn next. And along the way, we help them develop professional, appropriate levels of confidence, again, to borrow from some of Michael's research, to adapt to career challenges and career changes, including the dreadful unforeseen ones, such as COVID that was visited upon us all recently, and to adopt this attitude of professional curiosity, of being a fresh pair of eyes for your intended profession, and of being able to identify the kinds of contributions and the kinds of skills you would like to use and how you would like to use them, and for what impact if you don't know right now what your intended profession might be. So we're dealing with a lot when we talk about career development learning. I'd like to stop sharing my screen there and invite Sarah O'Shea now to talk about the reality that we face when we do not provide curricula that have these principles embedded into them, where we don't provide access in other ways to students who live with marginalising experience of different kinds, whether they're first in family or whether they're rural, regional, remote, or whether they have Indigenous heritage, or whether they're students with disability, whether they're LGBTIQ+, or any other form of marginalising experience. We impose burdens on our students and we devalue their participation if we do not provide access to career development learning, especially when it comes to their work integrated learning. So that's my introduction done, but Sarah, I'd be very grateful if you could speak to us for a few minutes about some of the voices that your research has unleashed for our benefit.
Thanks, David, and thanks for the invite today. I have to say I feel like a bit of an imposter because I no way do I feel that I'm an expert in careers related issues, but as David said, I'm coming from this from a more of an equity perspective. And so I thought I'd just touch briefly on some of the work that I've done. So I think for me, David mentioned that the first and family students, so these are students who are first in their immediate family to come to university. I think I was drawn to it because I'd done a lot of work with students pre-entry, and then as they transitioned into university and as they moved through university. And the key missing part of the puzzle to me were the alumni, those that had undertaken their degrees and left. So I was lucky enough to get a fellowship, and I actually engaged in quite an in-depth qualitative research with alumni, all of whom were first in the family. And I have to say the sort of the outcomes from that were quite eye-opening, because for a lot of these learners, you know, they didn't really come to university with the network's cultural capital, if you like, and were relying on universities to sort of provide that gaps in their knowledge. And after leaving university, many of them struggled to find work without that sort of network, without those skills. They weren't adequately prepared. And I think I allude, when I think about this, it was like they played what we term the old rules of the game, where they had gone through university thinking that really what they needed to do was to achieve high grades, get assessments in, and a lot of these were high achieving students, but they hadn't necessarily recognized that that was that extracurricular or that more work focused. For a lot of these learners as well, this was extra on top of their course load. They didn't engage in that because they didn't realize how important that would be when they get into the job market. So that fellowship in a way prompted me to explore this area in a bit more depth, and that led to a study looking at career development learning for students from low socioeconomic backgrounds in rural, remote areas. And this again was very interesting because we not only talked to the students, but also their parents and also careers advisors in schools to sort of get a sense of, you know, what was happening out there. And I'm happy to put the links to all the various reports into chat and things like that. But what we sort of found with that was that these students in particular, being in rural, regional, remote areas, needed a certain level of support from careers that was more contextualized, which I think CDL lends itself obviously to quite well. And then the third piece of work that I did was again, building on that CDL framing, was to work with students with disability. And so we undertook a large government-funded grant looking at how CDL was appropriate to students with disability. First of all, we benchmarked to see what was happening with students with disability, how they were getting their careers information. And from that, we developed a CDL hub, which I'm happy to say is hosted by ADSET and provides a whole lot of resources. So I don't know, David, that's sort of that's a whirlwind of where I'm coming from on the panel. You're on mute, David.
Thank you. I am. That's helpful too. No, I say thank you. Those are very helpful remarks. I think one of the things that you picked up, or did you mention, was the anger that students feel when they don't get this kind of support. And it's it is mentioned in your research that career services aren't really equipped to support the needs of first in family students, for example. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if anger is the right word, probably frustration. So a lot of these learners needed additional support. So for example, you know, I often with student stories, you know, certain stories stay in your mind. So I'm particularly reminded of one person who participated in the research, Bailey, who talked about going in on work placement as part of her degree. So I think she was doing law. And she talked about being in situations where she just felt that she didn't belong. So I'm talking about in the staff room, and in particular, I remember one quote that springs to mind where other members of the workplace were talking about you know, skiing in the school holidays, you know, boarding schools for children. And at the time, she was homeless and didn't have enough to eat. Now, I mean that's a very unfortunate set of circumstances. But for Bailey, what this made her feel was that she had made the wrong choice in you know, in pursuing this. She felt that she didn't belong in this sort of professional setting. Now, we can't do anything about the gaps that exist. You know, that's the reality. But what we can do is uh, prepare students from equity backgrounds for those types of scenarios. And I think that's where maybe there are some gaps, because they're going into workplaces or trying to navigate professional networks where they just don't have that cultural capital, for want of a better word, but they have other capitals. So I'm a great advocate in, you know, getting learners to recognize what strengths and capabilities they have, regardless of background, and what they can contribute to a workplace. And I think CDL does a lot in that space. So yeah, that's just one example of many I could pull out.
Thank you. I think that hits the nail on the head, because you know, what you've done is highlighted the role that career development learning plays in students' response to their circumstances. So instead of focusing on, you know, you need to feel this, or you should be, you know, asking these questions to network while you're on your placement, we need to be preparing students for their work integrated learning experiences by validating the very things that you're talking about. And that includes their experience of systemic discrimination and their responses to it. Because unless we do so, then that's what they are driven by. And I think this is one of the big opportunities that career development learning provides us with, is the opportunity to engage students with their individual response to their own circumstances. But our overworked and incredibly, you know, well staffed in terms of talent, our careers officers, you know, are not equipped to have those conversations with every student that needs them. And I think when it comes to WIL preparation, we've got opportunities there that are going begging. But you know, at this stage, I just wanted to ask Bonnie if you would like to chip in with some thoughts about, you know, how we can have these conversations, where career development learning should be best contextualised.
Thanks, David. Hello, lovely community. This is my opportunity to actually say hello and greet you all. It's always such a pleasure to be invited to come along to a WIL Australia event. I am one of your colleagues, so I feel like I'm actually, you know, on the outside observing this wonderful conversation, as well as being here and having some thoughts. What I would love to do, though, is I would love to know who we've got in the room. We've got 121 participants here, and no doubt you have some sort of intersection with careers or employability of WIL. What I would love to know specifically, though, if there is anybody on the call who would identify themselves as a third space practitioner. Now, a third space practitioner is somebody who is in the careers or graduate employability or even WIL space, who doesn't necessarily have a faculty teaching role, but works alongside students, with students directly. So if you are, give me a thumbs up. Let's see all of you beautiful third space practitioners. So we have some in the room. We do. Hi, thanks for joining the call today. Wonderful. I can see so many thumbs are being raised. Oh, you legends. Hi. Well, this is a space where you are very, very welcome.
Oh, Tom is moonlighting in the third space. Good on you, Tom.
Good on you, Tom. Hi, Tom. I really want to take this opportunity to really recognize you. Okay, I see you, and I really want you to know that the work that you're doing is incredibly important. Last year, I had the opportunity to work alongside Michael Healy under the leadership of Lauren Hanson, who works at Deakin University, to co-edit a special issue in the Journal of Teaching and Learning for Graduate Employability around third space graduate employability practitioners. Like, in this special issue, it was an opportunity for us to really raise the visibility of the work that we do and recognize how incredibly important it is. So what I feel in the current times, though, is that some of this work is often not well recognized or not well resourced. David, would you mind putting yourself on mute just for a moment? Because I find the background. There we go. Thank you. Look, we recognize that things are changing around many of our universities. But what I want you to know is that the work that you're doing alongside students is actually life-changing and transforming. So when I was a very new graduate, I actually studied creative arts and marketing, and I went into the world of marketing, and I was pushed out with very little preparation. And I felt like my first year of marketing as a marketing practitioner, I felt like I was drowning. And I don't think there was any other way I could describe this. I generally felt like I was drowning. The reason for that was because what I'd understood to be marketing is so aligned with what Sarah had just recognized for equity students, and first and family students, and that I felt like I hadn't had the opportunity to actually observe what work looked like. And I hadn't had the opportunity to discover who I am and what my preferences and career pathways actually are. So I think there's a real passion that I hold for work integrated learning and how it intersects with career development learning, because we're talking about people's individuals' lives here. And that's why I think it is incredibly important. Sometimes there is a confusion, or there is perhaps a dilution of the differences between CDL and WIL. And look, over the years, what we have seen is an absolute preference and explicit priority placed on work integrated learning. You only have to look at the MPIL that was 3 years of redirected funding to focus on work integrated learning. Those of us in the room, we probably already know. And what we need to get out to the masses, though, is just how essential career development learning is to the facilitation of work integrated learning. So work integrated learning is the pedagogy. It is the structure through which students can learn a specific discipline. You may learn a discipline in a classroom, but another pedagogy would be learning it alongside an industry partner, either in a workplace or alongside a workplace. Now, career development learning are those perspectives and strategies, including processes, psychosocial processes, where the individual gets to know themselves, reflect on their experiences, and channel that into career possibilities and pathways. So I think that's something.
Can I compliment you on that remark, Bonnie? Because that's the point, isn't it?
Yes.
That it's not that we often confuse career development learning for, and this is Michael's point, about a subset of career management skills like writing resumes and practicing interviews, all of which are important, but come after the sorts of things that you're talking about. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a body of research, and it is substantial and credible research, which is around career management. You look at Career Edge or the DOTS module, and there's others, which are certainly around developing career development learning as a capability. So it is also a skill, therefore it involves certain strategies. But I think what Michael's work has really, thrown a stone into the water and changed things up a little bit is to recognize that career development learning actually came from organizational and psychology, as well as counseling and education. So its origin actually came through as processual rather than as a strategy. Now, your question, though, your question was, what do we do all this and where is it located? Well, I think one of the things that we've done structurally in higher education is that we've often put third space practitioners in our own little units, which sit outside faculties. And I think that's problematic for several reasons. I think it's probably nice and neat to sort of keep us in central units, but it's problematic because what we don't do then is have direct access to the curriculum. And we know that the curriculum is inescapable for students. Where we need to see a much greater move and relationship is where third third space practitioners actually are at the table at the time that curriculum decisions are being made. We need to ensure that CDL, as well as modes of work integrated learning, are embedded in various manners, in various ways across a degree. I've heard of a student only just last week who was in their second year of their education degree, and they had their first PECS placement, and after a few days realized that this was actually not what they wanted to do. And I'm thinking, oh, imagine if there were career development opportunities right back in first year, where that person could have actually got to know themselves and crafted their own journey, or considered or had the opportunity to research possible pathways. I think these are things that we probably want to limit as much as possible. So I believe there is a stronger relationship that isn't quite done well across many institutions, which is where we have greater input and advice over the curriculum. And look, my second point before I get off my soapbox, but while I have it, is that I really do strongly believe that while work integrated learning has become a core pedagogy in higher education, we know it has become a core pedagogy in the last few years, not only because government funding have shone a really bright light on it, but also because it has become a module inside university teaching programs, whether that's face-to-face or it's a grad cert or it's an online program. WIL has become something quite prevalent now, alongside many other things that you learn in order to become a university teacher. What is currently lacking is bringing along career experts who are experts in their own right to teach into these spaces, so that educators can also learn about this discipline of careers and find ways that they can work together to implement inside their curriculum. Okay, now I'll take off from my soapbox. Thanks, David.
Well, thank you. That's a lovely soapbox, Bonnie. I think we should bottle it. And Michael would be in furious agreement with you. He's expressed his ideas about this really nicely in his writings when he's talking about students not being supported adequately to work through their sense of purpose and to interrogate their degree choice. This, of course, is so important for marginalised students or students with marginalised experience, because without the benefit of that support and that validation of their journey, whether it encourages, whether they end up feeling that they are in the right degree or whether or not they need to change, it's their engagement with their university journey that is being validated, and that's what I think Michael would agree is being denied them, because, and Michael's in a unique position to make this point because he works across high school, university and community careers education contexts. He's very well qualified to point out that as a system, the higher education system assumes that this kind of purpose integration is being done at secondary schools, which it isn't. So that's a big challenge, I think, for the sector, or an opportunity as well, that we more adequately engage with it. And it's a really good time for me to ask our delightful colleague Sally to chip in with some ideas about how we can do this at a program level.
I'm really conflicted, David, because I just had Kerry Lee Krause ringing me on the phone, and now I'm talking to all you wonderful people instead of speaking to the Chief Commissioner of TEXA, probably about how we enhance learning and teaching more broadly across the sector.
I'm sorry, I thought she was in the audience.
I could offer to put her on speaker. I'm sure she'd be delighted. Look, thanks so much also to everyone for having me as well. I'm in the Sarah camp. This isn't my special subject. I have uninformed views about a range of things, but I'm very happy to be here today.
You are expert in transition pedagogy, Sally.
Well, let me talk to you a little bit about transitions then as well, because it's riffing a bit off what Bonnie and the others have also spoken about. So I think increasingly we've really got to focus on how we assist all students and support them to navigate the transitions, which are micro and macro and up and down and in and out and circular, which I know Sarah's spoken about. So it's a quite dynamic view of transition. And when you're thinking about it as that socio-psychological process of becoming, they do it across multiple identities. So they come, and I'll I, like Sarah, will try to remember to put some of these links in. Perhaps I should have done so in advance if I was planned, which would have been a good idea. Make mental note to do that next time. So Peter Taylor and colleagues, riffing off the organisational psychology work, talk about the 3 coexisting identities, even when students are entering into university. They come, of course, with their pre-identity, which is, you know, where they're very strongly rooted, which comes with a number of strengths and some potential opportunities for employment. But we're not asking them to let go of that. But they come with that when they already got a forming student identity, and they already have some nascent identity about what their graduate identity might look like. So how do we facilitate students to work across those identities, think in a strengths-based way about what their strengths are? And I'll have another minute, if I can, a bit later on, talking about e-portfolios, which I think is a very powerful assessment that can acknowledge and sort of provide the through line for students in identifying what their acquisition of knowledge, skills, and values around their professional identity later on, but what they come in with. And also makes that important link, I think, between formal, informal, and non-formal learning. And helps them make sense of their learning. So transitions are important, and I would purport to endorse a transition pedagogy, which is just clever words for saying, well, if it's important for student success, and I think my 3 colleagues before me have made that case, and Michael in absentia also very strongly, if it's important for success, well, let's embed it in the curriculum, and embed it from first year to final year in an integrated and incremental way, so students can be supported to develop all the literacies and skills that they need. Thank you, Julia. I do love the clapping hands. It's very distracting. In an integrated and incremental way across the course of the whole curriculum, so the students are supported in their development. I'm sorry, I think I said that because I've got so many things buzzing around in my brain about what I want to, all the important things that I want to tell you about some of this. It settles students' sense of purpose. So I think helping students understand what the opportunities are goes a long way towards helping students, supporting students' mental health and well-being in the curriculum. We know that that's got a lot to do with sense of purpose, relationality, being equipped with a sense of capability. If we harness that early sense of motivation and purpose, and even if they've come in with the wrong idea about careers, we can, and I would say with respect, quite easily help them to make sense of what it is that they're engaging in, if we gave them the opportunity to almost self-assess against what the professional requirements are in the discipline, in an e-portfolio, or even in just a disjuncted first year assessment type way. So they can see that they've got skills, and they can think about that exploration of professional identity and make decisions a bit later on. Look, in terms of career development learning, I would very much endorse the incremental development of Will, and I see Faith's in the room, and I'm seeing her. I was frantically trying to find your links to your resources, Faith, then thought I should probably focus more on what I was actually going to talk about. But I'm wondering whether career development learning isn't sort of the first year aspect of embedding will in the curriculum, to try and get students to think about that, because it's too late really having students prepare for will in a just-in-time way just before they do it in the final year. They should be thinking about what the networking opportunities are, what it's like to be in a workplace, what it's like to be in this professional workplace from first year, and be thinking about the hidden jobs market that they don't know about, which Sarah would speak very expertly about. So there's some random ideas about embedding career development learning. I've offered to send a chapter around if anyone's interested, that I wrote in 2019, which I have just reviewed, and it's not terrible. So that's a high praise from me. That sort of mapped it from first year to final year, and thinking about how you would embed career development learning over first year, middle years, and later years, and also thinking about how you might harness e-portfolio across first year, middle years, and later years. And I would like to come back to that if I do have some time. There are some important points that I thought I might not get to make that I thought that I should. bit self-aggrandizing, but when I was in the AQF review in 2019, everything seemed to happen in 2019, we recommended that one of the general capabilities that should be embedded in a contextualized way in every degree were the core skills for work. So we tried to associate it with a framework, and I'll put a link in if I remember to the core skills for work framework. But the core skills for work framework embeds career development learning and that career exploration piece, which is so important. So that's how important we thought it was for lifelong learning for the nation's future, that in addition to language learning and numeracy skills, in addition to digital literacy, which now can riff off artificial intelligence literacy as well, and in addition to ethical decision-making, core skills for work should be something that should be learnt, taught and assessed, and I'll go again, integrated incrementally over the course of the whole degree, just as you would teach communication or problem solving or critical thinking, those other skills that we have. So good on us in the AQF review. And I also wanted, and I perhaps we'll put some links in, to remind ourselves of the equity group students, and David's done great work with students with disability. Sarah's already spoken about her first in family work and her low SES work. But there are other students that often fall out of these conversations who are also should be critically enabled. International students, and IEAA has some, I don't know what that acronym stands for, it's International Education Association of Australia, quite potentially, has some resources around that. But I also wanted to get to postgraduate students who come specifically back often to do a postgraduate course with the intent to change careers. And how much career development learning do we do there? Very little, I might suggest. And then the other area, which is Sarah's current home, is in high degree research students. And I love this title, the Australian Council of Learned Academics. I think, again, potentially in 2019, or it could have been in 2017, recommended that all HDR students have the opportunity to do work integrated learning, because they're being equipped to engage in employment and to have employability skills developed. So let's not forget, I know I would always focus on undergraduates, and I would particularly focus on first year students while we're trying to get them over that early transition hurdles, but there are a large number of students that need to be brought into this discussion. There endeth that lesson. Thank you.
Sally, thank you. You're seeing the rush of hearts there, and so you're hitting the mark for a lot of people. There are some great comments in the chat. I wanted to mention one of them in particular. Thank you, Faith, for this. I have concerns about overloading students. Yes, there should be collaboration between WIL and careers, but adding an extra strand might be a bit much. Far be it from me to laud the very worthy work that's being done at Deakin University, where I happen to work. But regarding that very worthy work that's being done at Deakin University, where I happen to work, we take a staged approach to this, and I think it's consistent with what Sally was talking about, that we introduce concepts in first year. If we align our practice with elements in the theoretical literature, we won't be overloading students. We'll actually be increasing their engagement with their core studies, because this is germane to their academic engagement. It is not an add-on. It is not separate to it. And if we don't take these kinds of steps, then we leave equity students at greater risk of attrition, and we risk them misunderstanding the purpose of work integrated learning as being a simple networking exercise, where they have the opportunity to get a job as a result of doing the work integrated learning. It's wonderful when it happens, but the overarching purpose of work integrated learning is learning. And there's a great deal in the work integrated learning curriculum that we need to our students to discover, and there's a lot of great work being done in different parts of the sector, but we could be far more organised about it. And this is, that's one of Michael's points as well, that that we need to harness the opportunities that career development learning provides us. And just a note that when we induct students into bodies of knowledge, students don't get that knowledge in isolation. I think this is a critical point, that our relationship with the evidence and the knowledge that come with particular disciplines teach us to be in particular ways. And we relate to evidence in particular ways because of the particular disciplines that we work with. They teach us to be in particular ways as well, and that is a key career development pillar. Career development learning is not so much about career management skills as helping students to harness, to understand and develop their view of the world and how they want to fit themselves into it. And it's always puzzled me why, and I know there are good reasons for it, but colleagues, I'd be grateful for your thoughts on this, why we don't build strategic preparation for work integrated learning into work integrated learning modules. And this would have tremendous equity capacity. We've all heard of adjustments. People have different attitudes towards them. But what if we were able to use work integrated learning as opportunities for students to take more control of that conversation that they are going to have with employers later on? It's a complex issue, but I think this is an opportunity that is staring us in the face. And I still see guidelines for academic staff that actually instruct them to have conversations with their WIL hosts or with the industry partner on behalf of the students. And I think this kind of legacy is dangerous for students, because if that's what we do, automatically, of course it's appropriate in some cases, but unless we're more organised about this, then I think we risk denying students career development in the form of getting practice at understanding how they can fit in to the workplace. Because don't forget, they can't predict with 100% certainty how they're going to fit into a workplace. We can help them research it. We can help them ask the kinds of questions that they need to ask. And that gives them practice in a safe space of becoming more of an emerging professional who has a great deal of things to offer, has questions to ask, has development priorities, and by the way, this is how I do my best work. Is that what you mean by being an inclusive organisation? We can help them with those sorts of conversations. It's easier to say, it's more complex to do, but I think that's an opportunity, the kind of thing that Michael has in mind when he speaks, or will have in mind when I mention it to you, about the ubiquity of career development learning. There are opportunities for career development learning that elude us if we're not deeply engaged with the theoretical literature that makes these kinds of opportunities spring out. Now,
David, can I just chime in on?
Please, I'm turning my microphone off.
What I also have observed, and I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the types of work placements that are mandatory inside degrees for completion of that degree. Particularly if you are in an accredited degree, you are mandated to have a certain amount of hours and placements and things like that. And I am sold on the benefits of WIL. I am absolutely sold on benefits of WIL. I think it is incredibly beneficial to experience the workplace in various ways, in various contexts prior to graduation. However, what I feel is missing, there's this missing piece between career development learning as something for introspection and future planning and possibilities, and placement, is that there's a space in between where wouldn't it be wonderful if students had greater agency to have work-based experiences which were solely for the purpose of career exploration? I have a PhD candidate, his name is Adrian Buck, who is a careers practitioner, and he's come from industry. And so these ideas are not my own. Adrian, I am totally riffing on your ideas here, and I hope that you get a lot of credit for this. But Adrian has brought to my attention that the structure and the way that we design WIL units is around a discipline. Unless it's like an elective and you self-select and then you go and do it. But I think where we could have so much more creativity and empowerment of the learner would be to have a unit or a module which is for credit, which is grounded in career development learning as well as a work experience. Now, that not necessarily be related to the specific discipline, but rather for you to identify and discover who you are and the types of things that you can bring to a specific workplace. While this is a concept at this particular time, I think there's something really rich and powerful in thinking around what actually sits in the middle there between CDL and work integrated learning that empowers students.
So if I might just chime in, because I'm obsessed with trying to find links. There were a great series of little online modules that I think I started at QUT, and I know we had them at JCU at some point, but there were modules there that, so I always take the, what's the path of least resistance approach. I put a link in the chat to some work that JCU colleagues did back in the day. Like it's almost, and I'm sorry, this might offend you, but it's a templated approach essentially to trying to think about how we might embed in a research informed way, an evidence-based way, embed career development learning in an integrated and incremental way across the curriculum, which then can be contextualized to the discipline. I always thought if we did nothing else in every degree other than, give them the opportunity to do a LinkedIn profile in first year, get them to reflect on their entering knowledge, skills and capabilities in an e-portfolio opportunity, build that reflective capability, get them to do a me in a minute Deacon type, what's my goal setting? What are my career aspirations? And then revisit those things. And a lot of those things can be sort of suggested to discipline academics and then embedded in that way. And part of that for me also was the harnessing of these online career development little e-learning modules, one of which was preparation for placements. And that's what I've frantically been trying to find it. Others can probably find it more easily than me. It used to be all open access, but now we're all in competition. So let's not share. Which I just thought, was perfect, because again, from a path of least resistance way, there's quality products that we can embed in the careers at relevant points. And I suppose I should just pause for a minute and acknowledge, and Bonnie's spoken specifically about third space professionals. So I would have everyone around the curriculum redesign table, all the third space professionals, careers and employability people, absolutely, but also disability practitioners, so that we can think about what the reasonable adjustments might be and how we assist students thinking about that. And we would use David Eckstein's work on that as well, who I think the tagline for your work, David, was the least interesting thing about me is my disability.
Yeah.
So let's be, in a string space way, let's incorporate those opportunities. But I also need to acknowledge that at the moment we're all doing it a bit tough in higher education, I think. Everyone's really under stress and pressure. There are so many redundancies, and even if you're not personally affected, and I'm sure there are colleagues in the room who are being personally affected as we speak to this, you can't help but take on sort of the sector grief, I think, given everything that's going on. So we are looking for not lazy, easier ways to try and build this work, and in an incremental. So all of this is, our first pass at it. So let's, think about how we can get everyone around the table, work collaboratively and cooperatively. All the things we know that are good for mental health and well-being of students are things that are good for mental health and well-being of staff. So, harness the intrinsic motivation, get the relational piece working, work with trusted colleagues in ways that are easier rather than harder, and make it easily distilled about how you might be able to embed these matters. I'm sorry, I forgot where I started talking, but anyway, I'm going to stop.
Well, you've reminded me of a number of things, Sally, and one of them, the most seductive one, is the path of least resistance, and this is again, look, it harks back to some of the work that's being done now in different parts of the sector, but including the one that I work in directly now. And please allow a shameless plug for my director, Lauren Hansen, who is working with colleagues to build affordances approaches to achieve the very things that you're talking about, making use of what's already there, repurposing things slightly in the interests of our students, especially students with marginalised experience. I think there's also a note about this in the chat. Again, thank you, Faith, who says, sorry, I'm paraphrasing here, and correct me if I'm mischaracterising you. Yes, you're all very well, but as long as the workload is acknowledged, and I think that's a really important point. Isn't it? We can diminish or not exaggerate the amount of work that's required by harnessing the expertise that is there in different parts of the university. But I think I think this gets to the heart of a really practical matter. The work needs to be recognised, doesn't it? And I think Sarah and Bonnie, you've got things to say about this, because in our preparatory discussions for today, you've likened the status of career development learning now to the status of work integrated learning about 10 or more years ago. And Michael describes this as the emergence of a proto-jurisdiction. How am I doing there, colleagues? Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I think so, David. I think, look, work integrated learning has been evolving over, decades of work, stemming from the days in which a discipline or a work was learned on site. So my mum is a registered nurse, and she learned how to become a registered nurse in the hospital. But soon after that, there were education centres set up so you could learn the discipline of work. Now, work integrated learning sort of became that bridge between those two worlds. What I think work integrated learning offers, not only do we know from research, which is incredible. We've got Denise Jackson on the line and many other researchers here present. So please feel free to share your research in the chat. We're having such a lovely share-a-thon. So scholars, go ahead and put them in the chat. That's incredibly helpful to disseminate your own work as well. But what we've noticed is that work integrated learning has received a lot of attention. It's received national attention, it's received government attention. It is in almost every single higher education strategy. So it is visible and tangible, and there is a lot of strategy developed around work integrated learning. Now, whether or not that's translating into resourced practices is a whole nother conversation. But what we can recognise is that work integrated learning has been elevated as a practice which is beneficial for students, for the higher education sector as well, because of the industry partnerships and the potential relationships that come from that, the preparation of our students, but also we know the industry can also benefit from having students as well. Now, career development learning has been along the ride the entire time, and my perception is that it has often been seen as separate, but because of the less visible outputs, the less visible or explicit outcomes, then it hasn't received as much attention. What we need to do is we need to elevate CDL to the same level of WIL. We need to say that WIL cannot be done without CDL. Like, it cannot be done. Otherwise, it's just work experience. We need CDL, and we need it across a course. We need it embedded before, during, and after a work integrated learning experience. But where I would love to see the sector going is to have an employability strategy across every single institution, not just a WIL strategy, but an employability strategy that encompasses all these things in partnership. And ideally, I'd like to push that up nationally as well. I think there should be something nationally around employability, and recognizing that while these have been talked about as discrete practices and philosophies and educational approaches, that we do need to find a better way to move forward together.
Sarah, as distinguished professor and lead of an equity research centre at Charles Sturt, would you like to chip in? There are some. I'm just thinking that your senior position gives you, a perspective of somebody who's also responsible for resources and how they're used, because our ideas are always attractive, but they have to be practical too, don't they? And how readily can we elevate the practice of career development learning and recognise the staff contributions that we're talking about?
Yeah, thanks, David. Look, I feel that what's happening in the chat is probably answering that question, because there is a lot of work already done out there, and I think this harks back to Sally's point and Bonnie's point as well, that given the situation that we're all undertaking and witnessing in higher education at the moment, there is a push that we need to work smarter, not harder. And I wonder if, given the good work that is already going on and the excellent resources I can see that people are sharing, I wonder if there's an opportunity for collectively to leverage that, rather than each institution trying to do this on their own. I don't know, maybe Sally or Bonnie have something else to add there as well.
Well, at the risk of being theoretical, I think one of the big things that we're really missing in the nation, in the world, perhaps I should write to Donald Trump about it. I'm sure he'd be interested. Is that research knowledge translation piece that makes it easier for time poor everybody's to do the good deeds that I know intrinsically they want to do. Very few people, I think, work in the sector with evil intent. So they want to do the right things by staff, by their colleagues, and by their students. But it's hard to know, and there are so many different things coming at them from so many different angles, including just how to keep themselves nice on a day-to-day basis. So yes, I absolutely 6,000% agree, Sarah. It's not helpful to keep nuancing these discussions, with then what if you just did it with a double pike and a twist here? That would just make it a bit better. So what do you actually want me to do that I can do here and now, if I wanted to do it in my first year subject, that would make a difference to students so that they start getting the employability and the employment literacies that they need? And I think there's another interesting distinction. I think we might have gone too far on the employability. Sorry, that's probably very controversial, but we certainly, very good to do all the employability stuff. But I think we skipped over a bit the labour market literacy piece, which is what Sarah's students are talking to. And if I can allow myself an indulgence, so as a 16-year-old first in family graduate from doing law, which was a terrible mistake because I had no career advising, I went out to try and get a job in November of fourth year in my Katie's, and you probably don't even remember that. So it was a miller's suit, brown suit, taking my handwritten photocopied CV around to people, only to discover that everyone did that at the end of halfway through third year because that's what you did to get a job in law, because you had to go and get articles of clerkship. So I missed the whole boat. So think of the little me's. Well, that would be nice. I'd like to think of a little me every now and then. There are so many. We've got to do the right thing by these students. It's part of the promise that we offer in higher education, and there are ways to do it that we've seen a lot of resources in the chat about. Thanks.
But yes, all of the great work that is being done, is it being done in, and this is a genuine question, is it being done in spite of the way that the system is organised?
All right, friends, David has posed a poll. We are going to use our thumbs. If we agree with David's statement, we're going to say, yes, we are doing this work in spite of our lack of resources and in spite of the systemic challenges that we face in our higher education. If you believe that is true, just give us a thumbs up. You go, David, you're going to get your answer. Oh!
We've created a monster.
Yeah. Yeah, look at all of those thumbs going up. Look, in an ideal world...
So we don't need to ask the other questions, is that what you're saying?
No, look, I just think what is happening is that we have experts right here, and the over 100 people are experts in this room.
Yeah,
they are very good at what they do. They engage with their students. They know the students that they work with, and they ensure that they do the very best they can for the students with the resources and the leadership that they've been given. And I think this is the reality. I think in an ideal world, we would have more resources and we would have better collaborative cultures and things like that. So I don't think the issue is here on the ground. This is what I believe. The issue is not here.
I'm agreeing with you, and
yes.
And I'm, again, I'm harking back to some of our preparatory conversation, and the question therefore is, how readily, and colleagues in the chat, please chip in, and we need to take some of your questions because we're into our last half hour. But how, a question for you: how readily is engagement with this kind of equitable work integrated learning acknowledged in not just in annual performance plans or reports, but in promotion? And how readily do promotion panels understand the issues and acknowledge them?
Yeah, look,
I'm in your hands here.
You've touched on a really a tricky space as well, which is around the recognition of the work. For those who are teachers who are facilitating work integrated learning and CDL within your curriculum as an educational approach that you particularly choose to do, and then you will know intimately around the resourcing challenges that you have, and also the workload challenges, and just how much workload it takes to engage industry partners and come up with those new projects each semester and make sure everybody's content and prepared and risk averse and all those things. It takes a lot of work. Where I believe it hasn't translated into, and this is what David was touching on here, was that hasn't necessarily translated into recognition within like promotion systems and things like that. I do recognise that at one point the University of Newcastle had a WIL award, and that made my heart so happy for a period of time, because I thought, isn't that wonderful to recognise a group of people who are doing this work? But I actually think it also needs to be bigger and broader than that. So we do need to have greater recognition systems for this work. We need to have greater workload recognition for the type of work that is involved in this. But also, I think if somebody is engaged in a work integrated learning space, and that is an education focused role, that there also needs to be a greater support for that person to be able to apply for promotion, to be able to get recognition for that particular work throughout their career, without your career. I think this is a whole nother space that the conversation could go into as well.
Okay, well, thank you. So, some systemic challenges there, because what we can't afford to do is to lose all the great work that is being done. People do run out of puff, and they shouldn't have that imposed on them. So there are some comments in the chat. We had one or two, we had a few questions pre-submitted. I would like to put one question to the panel, and then perhaps we can take some questions from the chat, because it gets to the point about the contribution of people in the third space. I think it's just been reviewing some web pages with colleagues for new information on what will be the WIL Australia website soon. And it's wonderful to see the contributions of professional staff acknowledged in those pages. There's a question here, though, specifically about third space professionals. They play a crucial role in advancing pedagogical strategy, or this pedagogical strategy, career development learning in WIL. What are the blockers and enablers for academic teams and third space professionals working together towards stronger and more equitable careers outcomes? We've touched on the recognition and the reward, but are there others?
So, sorry, and I'm just going to do it while I remember. I've just got a link to an article from the Student Success Journal written by Emily McIntosh and Diane Nutt on their book, on the whole book on the third space, space, for what it's worth. What are the blockers and enablers? Well, I suppose we need to take it seriously. It used to be my answer about learning and teaching. We could take learning and teaching seriously occasionally, and that might be a good thing, and might even buy back our social license. I don't know. There you go. So where is the time and the space and the workload made available? If this is important, and I thought it was important, I did a presentation to a university council, so I cannot name the university, where I spent some time explaining the difference between employability and employment, because at senior levels so the council I'll forgive because they might not be aware, but it also included a number of senior academics from the institution who didn't understand the difference. So there's an engagement piece with the senior leadership to understand what it is that we're talking about. That it's not just looking at the GOS data and the student and the employer satisfaction data and going, yes, we're good, yes, we're middle, no, we're bad. We're good at employability, but we're bad at employment. And I can't understand, because it shouldn't those two be the same. And in a lot of instances where universities have a lot of equity deserving students, the difference will be in the fact that we didn't do the labour market literacy piece, and we didn't help them with that environmental scanning that they need to, and think about the hidden job market piece. But I would encourage, I'm not going to say my senior leaders, colleagues, because I'm not a senior leader, I'm not there anymore, but my colleagues in the senior leadership ranks to think about, is this a priority? What does it mean? How are we going to make this happen? Because all the policy settings are now apparently getting us in the right space. There's no point, and Sarah, I'm very conscious of Sarah's enormous expertise in this space. There's no point getting equity deserving students in the door, through the doors, through the screens and out to the other end, and then not being able to, not having the capabilities to get the jobs that they need. So it's taking me back now to Serena Russo having those things on Queensland television in the middle of the day, how to get that job. But it's a bit about that. It has to be student success across the life cycle. And it's more than that, just to make it even harder. It's framing it as a lifelong learning capability now as well. So the emphasis is on, and this, if we're not doing this, it's hard to know what it is that we are actually doing in higher education. If we're not building students' capability to engage in lifelong learning, to do that constant metacognitive, not in the self-destructive way that I probably do it all the time, but thinking about, so what are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? What are the gaps? Where can I go to get the next thing? And this is why I would again say that EYE portfolio is so important. So I was aware of an institution that had excellent things around career development learning, but has cancelled its e-portfolio remit. I don't know why you do that in whatever year we're in. I'm just going to look at my thing on the bottom. Apparently we're in 2025. I just looked because it says that that's the correct thing. So, so it's as with most of these things, it's whole of institution commitment. It's everyone working together. It's senior leaders who probably we leave out of these discussions because we think that intrinsically or somehow they know that these discussions are taking place. But it's senior leaders, it's academic and professional staff, and working with students as well, of course, obviously. And perhaps I think that we've untapped the student market, this is because I'm tired. I used the wrong word, and so everyone will now criticise me for that. But we don't tap the student agency in this, and they're probably some of our biggest proponents. And I always find certainly the education minister likes talking about student anecdotes. I think senior leaders like hearing about student anecdotes. So perhaps we need to better sell the narratives around this, which is, again, so Sarah's got some great lines that you can riff with out of her research to try and get everyone focused on why this is such a priority and why now.
Sarah, would you care to riff?
Oh, I'm not prepared for riffing. But thank you, Sally. I mean, most of the quotes and the information is available. Were you thinking of a particular line there, Sally?
I was thinking about your preppy
Well,
sod.
it's the one, it's the preppy sod line. It's the one, so Sarah and I, which are talk about being scary, Sarah and I did a session for NAGGAS. And again, I can't unspell that acronym, but it's
National
the
Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Services.
There you go.
Oh, yeah,
See,
that's nice.
there's people. So, you know, we do weird stuff, don't we, Sarah? And so in researching for that, because of course you can't just get up and speak, you have to spend hours thinking about what you might say and then never say any of it. I reread a lot of Sarah's work, and the quote that stood out for me was from one of her first in family, probably a low SES student, was, and I don't think you've said it, and I have been trying to listen, that I thought, you know, going to university, applying myself, getting good grades, while I'm trying, you know, open square brackets, while I'm just trying to live my very complex and complicated life as well, would be enough. No one told me that I had to build out my CV like a preppy sod to get a job. So these are the hidden rules that I think career development learning unpacks for equitably for everybody. So anyway, so there's a possibility.
Because I think that's a very good point, and you know, intentional career development learning helps with that issue, because it's not the student with the most padded resume that gets work, because you know the labour market isn't made for our convenience, and I think that perhaps you know goes some way to answering that question. You know, why do we have this disparity between developing employability and employment outcomes? It's because the labour market is not made for our convenience. And yeah, but to the second part of your point about that question is that students need to develop their adaptability. That's the heart of career development learning, and that will help them navigate these difficulties with an eye on what they want to achieve with their learning and how they want to join their intended profession. So I think that's a key part of the discussion.
May I just offer an example there, David? I thought one of the most...
Quickly, because we're going to have to wrap up shortly, and we need to talk about our leaders just briefly, which you raised earlier.
Okay, one of the most one of the most powerful examples I thought of assessment, and it'll probably come as a shock to the people that were doing it. Back in the day at QUT, in the final year, because we were very big on creative industries and we probably still they probably still are. Forget who I am often. But in their final year, as a capstone unit, students were required to do an environmental scan. So exactly talking to the, you know, the hidden job market, thinking about the networking. And then, so that was an assessment. And then the other piece of assessment was develop a grant application for a grant round that you've found. So getting students right into thinking, so what is it like as I'm just about to enter? So that wouldn't be good enough just on its own, of course, you'd have to build up to it. But I just thought, what a great entering, you know, transition out piece to do the environmental scan of the job market. And wouldn't it be even better if you'd embedded, I'm sure they did, embedded through the curriculum building up to that.
Sorry, I'll just jump in really quickly. This year and last year, I've been teaching into a unit which is on career development learning. I've been teaching health students and business students and a range of other students across these spaces, and the entire unit, so across the 12 or 13 weeks, is actually dedicated to career development learning. And one of the things is exactly that, Sally. So there is an environmental scan, as well as getting to know yourself, as well as building skills and capacity, as well as identifying your strengths. So I think there is space for a range of different strategies. Now, not every degree will have the luxury of having an entire unit which is dedicated to career development learning. I think that is a luxury, and it's, you know, incredibly beneficial to the students, and I'm loving teaching it so much. But there really do need to be opportunities where students can scan the environment, when they can look to themselves and say, what is it that who am I? Who do I want to be? What do I know about myself? What are my strengths? What are my capacities? How can I learn? But also, you know, down to career management skills. So what is a CV? What is the purpose? Who is the audience? Through to how can I craft one that has meaning? Where are the gaps? How can I improve that? Those kinds of things. So it truly is quite a big spectrum of activities.
And in first year, you could do it by getting past students to send back their business cards. And I'm particularly thinking in science and in arts, general courses send back their business cards, and on the back 3 dot points about what it is that they do, put them all up on a website and get first year students to engage with however many they would like to and write a reflection on that. And I know there was a question in the chat about and how do we stop a pre-post question about how do we manage academic integrity in these environments. Well, look, I think this is one of these things that one of these situations where if they're going to scam it, then they're going to scam it, but they're doing it at incredible damage to themselves, and we shouldn't ruin the experience for everybody else because we're too worried about academic integrity. If we sell the piece about how this is so important to their future personal and professional life, if we can't get that over the line, then the percentage that will do that. But in the meantime, we will have tremendously advantaged all of the people that have had the opportunity to focus and think about what it is that they're preparing for.
So my question for the panel and for colleagues in the chat is how do we put these things to how do we ensure that our leaders know about these issues? How do we bring them in to the conversation, because they can't help unless we ask them. Is there anybody there?
I don't know. So, I mean, we're at a brave new dawn, apparently, with ATEC. Surely there must be some opportunity to be thinking about that. I'll ring Kerry Lee back right now. I think the Higher Education Standards Framework is where does it say anywhere in the Higher Education Standards Framework that anyone has to pay any attention to curriculum, to employment, and employability? We've got to have back in the day, it used to have graduate attributes in there, and course learning, program learning outcomes or whatever. Nothing, counts so much as it counts. And I know I'll have a number of colleagues that will be delighted at the idea of doing more accountability piece, but apparently we need to be accountable before we will shift practice. So if it matters, this could be one of the outcomes. I know that in terms of the quadruple disability support fund money that's coming in, where we've gone from 10 million to 53 million, there are serious and there are opportunities to employ, and you could employ a career development person specifically directed at disability inclusion under the renewed guide, under the new disability support program guidelines that are coming out, but then you're going to be held accountable. So someone needs to have all of this in their head, and perhaps the onus is on us as I'm not an expert, you lot as the experts. I can do something a little bit about disability employment piece, but to brief our senior leaders or send it up the chain, or let ATEC know, or let our university groupings know that this is important, and we're not going to see the progress that we need unless we do pay attention. Then we're all going to look a bit silly otherwise.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got two thoughts. The first one is, look, WIL Australia is definitely advocacy space, and there are other networks which are incredibly important as well for our advocacy. And I know that WIL Australia has been doing work with the government, and we were there right at the beginning when the NPILF was being designed, and we had a conversation with them around what that could potentially look like. So I really do think that there is a huge role for WIL Australia to play. But I also think we each of us individually can actually take steps towards this. I am a big advocate of scholarship of teaching and learning, and the scholarship of teaching and learning has a core element which is called dissemination. So you can do the work, you can do a great work, and your students can tell you that it's great and all that kind of thing. But core to SOTL is actually telling others and sharing with your peers your findings in order to then improve and refine and do those kinds of things. What I find I actually love is when I go to my work Facebook, which is called LinkedIn, and I see that there is another WIL practitioner or a careers expert who's just done these amazing, careers expo, or shares a story anonymized by a student, or is going places and talking about WIL. I actually think dissemination is actually really important in order for us as a group to gain visibility. I also think we need to start sharing and following those people, you know, the leaders in our institutions. They will follow us back. And the more that we can promote our good stories from the ground, the more they're going to see us, the more visible we will be. And if you do make a post on work Facebook and we're friends, I will like it. I promise. I will see it. I will read it. Jen Ruskin has been doing some amazing stuff, and I feel like I've been along the journey, you know, because I feel like it's a way that you can also engage with us so we can see the work that you're doing. Don't feel free to make yourself perfect on LinkedIn. Just feel free to say, hey, I had this really great chat with this person today, and I felt really good about it. I think that's also really important. Yeah, so just small steps. Dissemination is key.
Will I just finish off quickly, David, or
Thank
do
you. That would
Yeah,
be cool,
yeah. Look, I think I agree with everything Bonnie and Sally have said. I suppose for me, what will make things change? Well, the sociologist in me would prefer this was not the case, but it will be policy. And it's coming, because you only have to look at the Accord. I mean, the Accord is framed around the future of Australia, about, you know, basically it is around getting our students out postgraduate and into the marketplace. So a lot of the discourse in the Accord is around employment. And so I think Yvonne has already pointed it out. There are going to be attainment targets coming down the track. I mean, it's just inevitable. But equity equally is going to be key for this. You only have to look at the huge jump in participation rates that's expected from the sector. So that's where I think the shift will occur. It will have to be the big stick rather than the carrot for the leaders, I'm afraid. And on that note, I'll mute myself and pass back to you, David, to conclude this great session.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. But particularly thank you to our panellists who have done such a wonderful job at delving into the practicalities of these issues. I think this discussion has been a celebration of the great work that's been done in, I think, isolated parts of the sector. But we need to protect this, and we need to enhance it. And I think that the practical suggestions that are there are very helpful. We're lucky to have WIL Australia on our side. We have a direct line to the new commissioner through Sally. Thank you, Sally. And of course we have socials. Was it a thumbs up, Sally? Excellent. And the suggestion about using our socials, and also from Bonnie, and also coming through in the chat as well, that there are people blogging. Our association is a tremendous support for us, but it's not the only one. There is the National Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Services is a key ally in this, and that's the association that I come from. I've had a lot to do with, but of course there's also ATEN, the Australian Tertiary Education Network on Disability. There's Equity Practitioners Association, Higher Education Australasia, EFIA. There's the NAEEA, the National Association of Enabling Educators. We're spoiled for choice. And we have these supports here, and we can create. I'll thank you, Yvonne. There's an ACCAS link there in the chat, and thank you for putting your resources and your ideas in the chat. We'll make sure we circulate this to everyone afterwards, together with other resources, and we're keen to continue this conversation at a later date. But for now, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you again to our panellists for being so generous with their time, not just today, but in the preparation over the last 6-8 weeks leading up to this discussion. And I bid you a very good afternoon. Bye for now.